Welcome back to Open Window Politics. Today we're going to be doing a prediction for the 2026 U.S. Senate elections during the midterms here for Trump's second term. So we'll start out with, I've already characterized the safe states. With that brings us to 43 for the Democrats to 45 for the Republicans. And we'll start out with the likely seats for the with the Democrats actually. We'll start with that. For the Democrats, pretty straightforward, only the state of Minnesota. Minnesota, of course, has a pretty consistent long history of voting for Democrats, so this isn't too much of a surprise, but that is going to be one more seat, bringing Democrats to 44. And then there are going to be quite a few seats for Republicans in the likely category. Start out with Florida. Florida has shifted pretty far to the right, and Republicans have done quite well in Florida in recent years. And I don't think that the Democratic optimism and favorability at the moment will be enough to bring the state of Florida much narrower. I think it will still end up in the Republican Party's column, so that's going to be one seat. And then Texas, I also see going into the Republican Party's column. There is an interesting Democratic and a Republican primary going on in the state of Texas. That is going to be an interesting one to watch, give us an idea of what the odds are for the general. But that's going to be one more seat for the Republicans. And interestingly enough, the state of Nebraska, which I normally on the presidential levels for the state at large is usually in the safe red column. The only reason this state is now in the likely is because there's an independent, Dan Osborne, who actually ran for Senate in 2024 against the other Republican senator from Nebraska. Ultimately, Dan Osborne did lose. He did outperform Harris fairly considerably, so it'll be interesting to see with an election year that is shaping up to be more favorable for Democrats. If an independent like Dan Osborne can win the state of Nebraska. At the moment, I think it's a possibility, but I think it would take quite a bit. And at the moment, if the election were to be held today, I just don't quite see it. So that would be one more seat for the Republicans that they hold on to. And then the state of Iowa I'm predicting, will also end up in the Republican Party's column. This is also going to be an interesting state to watch. We'll have to see what happens, but I'm going to call it for the Republicans. And then that leaves us with, I'll start with the Democrats seat. There's really only one in the lean category, that being the state of New Hampshire. New Hampshire, also fairly consistent history of voting for Democrats on the Senate level, so it's not too much of a surprise. And then we'll get to the state of Alaska. Alaska, I'm going to put in the lean red column. This state would generally be in the likely, if not safe, column for the Senate race. However, there's a very popular Democrat, former House of Representatives for the state of Alaska, Mary Peltola. She was a great pick for Democrats and will probably narrow up the race. I'm not certain if it will be enough to flip the state. I think it's a possibility. Again, like I said with a couple of these, I think Alaska is definitely more of a possibility that it flips blue than any of these likely states for the Republicans. But nonetheless, that's going to be one more seat for the Republicans. So that brings the Republicans to 50 seats, and that means they will hold the majority, at least for the rest of Trump's term, with Vance being the tie-breaking vote. And there's more good news for the Republicans. I'm going to predict the state of Ohio to also be in the Republican Party's category. Democrats are running Sherrod Brown, who's a Democrat that lost, who was a former senator for the other seat in Ohio. He lost as well in 2024 and is hoping to stage a comeback to get back into the U.S. Senate. At the moment, I think that Ohio will remain pretty conservative and Republican-leaning, and I think that Sherrod Brown would narrow things up. Normally, the state of Ohio is in the likely category, but not enough to win the state, so that's going to be 51 seats for the Republicans. So they are guaranteed control of the Senate. And that leaves us with these 4 swing states that I will do in the tilt categories. So for Georgia, I'm going to start with Georgia and end with Maine. Georgia and North Carolina, these are both going to be interesting states to watch. Jon Ossoff, the incumbent Democrat, is running in Georgia. At the moment, he's looking like he will most likely be the victor. It will be close, though. Georgia is definitely a swing state, so we'll have to see what happens. And then North Carolina, I see this as one of the more likely flips for Democrats to gain a seat. in this seat there is a former Democratic popular governor, Roy Cooper, who is running for the Senate election here, and I think he was also a great pick for Democrats. And at the moment, I would probably call the race in favor of Roy Cooper for the state of North Carolina, so 47-51. Michigan, if I remember correctly, in my last maybe 2 predictions ago, I put it into the Republican Party's column. For now, the environment is looking really good for Democrats. We saw that special election in Texas. That was a huge Democratic flip. And it'll be interesting to see if that momentum carries through to the midterms. We're still a little ways out, so things definitely could change. But for now, I'm going to put the state of Michigan in the Democratic Party's column. And then there is going to be a second opportunity for Democrats to flip a seat. This is going to be in Maine. This seat, Susan Collins, she has outperformed the polls in prior elections. As a Republican, she's won in what is generally regarded as to be a lean Democratic state, at least on the presidential level. But Susan Collins has faced tough challengers, but has emerged victorious against a variety of Democrats from the state. And this election, if I were to call it, would probably be the one that ultimately results in a Democratic victory. We're seeing fewer and fewer states have one senator from one party with another senator from the other party, where very few states have that. And so it'll be interesting to see if the partisan nature of Maine, if Susan Collins can somehow pull off a chance of victory and still win as a Republican in a blue state. She's definitely, of course, tried to and has portrayed herself as more of a moderate, so she knows her constituents. But at the moment, I would probably call that to be into the Democratic Party's column. So as far as what that will look like for the Senate, like I've mentioned, so in this prediction, that would leave 3 states with one party senator and the other from the other party, being the state of North Carolina because of the flip from Roy Cooper. And then Pennsylvania has McCormick and Fetterman, one Democrat, one Republican. And then Wisconsin, of course, has Tammy Baldwin and Ron Johnson. These are going to be the only states to have a mixed delegation by political party. So a bit of an interesting case there. But as far as my prediction goes, this is going to be 51 seats for the Republicans to 49 for the Democrats. Don't forget